you, Reverend Moore, for the beautiful meditation. So my talk today is titled Love and Faith, How to Make Them Work for You. And you know, this is the end of February, so I was thinking that the power of love is for the month of February, and this month is almost over. So I got to thinking, how can we continue this idea of love on beyond this month? And then I kind of leaped back into January and thought, well, you know, we could tie faith, which is the power for January, together with love and see how we can implement both of those in our lives. So we start kind of a journey through these 12 powers this year. But you might be wondering, how do these two powers work together? Or why are they important in our spiritual growth? And how can they enrich my life? Well, this week we're going to explore the love and faith, and we're going to be answering these questions by awakening our spiritual awareness. And now it's time to finally wake up this morning, okay? And affirm our statements of truth together. So let's do that.
I am the child of God. I am deserving of good in my life. I am accepting my good now.
Well, the thing is that this is February, and it is coming to an end, but we actually get that extra day this year, you know. It's the leap year, so we have that extra day tomorrow. And if you remember last year, I talked about getting an extra day this year and what special thing you were going to do with that extra 24 hours. It's like a gift, you know. And that's something you're going to still have to process. But I hope whatever you choose to do, that it is filled with love and that you express love with that extra day. But again, I'm going back to trying to figure out how to keep all this going. And the idea of leap year, you know, just made me just think about like leaping around and in joy and faith and love and allowing it to express freely in our lives without any hesitation. So the thing we got to remember, though, just like leap year only shows up every 4 years, we don't want love and faith to be that obscure, do we? We want it to be in our lives all the time expressing, because that's how we come around to expressing that Christ within. So we need to learn some skills. We need to figure out some ways to utilize this in our life, and we're going to begin with faith. And from Dynamics for Living, Charles Fillmore's book, he says, faith is the fire of spirit. Don't you love that? The fire of spirit. Just think about that. Faith opens the door into an inner consciousness where we hold the word steadily in mind until the spiritual substance responds to our word. Okay, so this is basically saying that we know that faith is that knowing of things unseen. The opening of that door in our mind to where we can affirm that something is so, like that God is with us, that we have all the truth we need, everything is in abundance in our lives. And faith beholds that deep inner knowing, and whatever we want or whatever we desire is coming forth no matter what, through the spiritual substance, which is God, or the universe, or the all, whatever you want to call it. Now the thing we have to remember is that this power is working on a spiritual level. You know, because people, you know, a lot of people say faith is not the knowing, but the belief. So people will say, oh, if I have enough faith. Well, you have enough faith. You don't have to get more faith. We have all the faith we could ever need in the entire universe because God freely gives that to us. And so all we have to do is remember, though, that it's a spiritual level. And probably most of the things that we're desiring in life or that we're trying to affirm in our life are usually on the physical level. But the minute we go behind that physical and see what the spiritual is, then we can feel and know that truth, and we can feel and know faith. And then whatever's supposed to happen on the physical level will come from that spiritual space, which will be better than we could even imagine in our heads. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
And that happens because God is only good, and God only brings forth good. But the minute we start putting our own thoughts to it, guess what happens? We get to have free choice. We get to choose how we see it. So if we don't keep going back to the spiritual underlying behind it, then we could produce something in the physical that might not be what we want. But once we go to that spiritual and it comes forth, we're going to know it. It's that knowing inside, that fire of the Spirit that Fillmore's talking about, and we're going to know it, and it's going to feel so good that we'll want to celebrate it. You know the difference, right? Everybody's experienced that before. Something you desire comes forth, the parking space out front, but what you really want is to have the friendship and love from coming into this place, and you get that, right? And that's the idea of getting that perfect parking space so that you can readily get in here without any troubles. And that's the thing we have to remember, that desire is a magnet, you know? It is a magnetic power. And last week, the youth church theme was love is a magnet, right? And the kids came in, and I thought that was really cute that they, the things that they put on their chart and everything, and the idea of that magnet. And the thing is that love being that magnet can bring us, and it's, you know, we think of the love as a magnet out here, like a physical magnet. But think about love being in here as the magnet. You know, what's going to happen? Boom, 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 boom. You know, the things are going to come if we're expressing from love, right? It's a big difference. And that love that we express from that brings us peace of mind. And actually, when it brings us that peace of mind, it's reinforcing faith. Because we're feeling and knowing that those things are working in our lives. And faith is a knowing aspect, and love is a feeling. And once we get those balanced out, man, that's really a cool thing that can happen in our lives. We get that perfect alignment. So, we know that the idea of faith is more than a belief, and it's more powerful than anything that we can see, and yet it's attached to whatever we are thinking. So, if we're thinking negative thoughts, or thoughts that aren't true on a spiritual level, then we might find it difficult to find faith. We might start thinking about faith out here rather than the faith that is within us that can easily be expressed. And all we have to do is, if we have a thought that we're wondering if that is a faith-filled thought, all we have to do is ask ourselves this: is this a loving thought? Because the minute you ask that question, it makes you aware, doesn't it? It gives you, it kind of flips the switch and goes, ooh, maybe that isn't a loving thought. Maybe that isn't a love-filled thought. And if the answer is no, then all we have to do is change the feeling within us, change it to having faith, and then faith activates in our brains, and the thought becomes something better. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
And that's important to understand that concept, because we think it sounds like an easy thing to do, and yet we know it's laborious, because we have to first pay attention to what we're thinking, and then we have to think about what we're thinking, and then we have to decide where the thought is coming from, and then we have to implement it in our lives for the highest good. And what do we usually do? We usually just babble, go on talking, trying to work our way through it. We don't take time to stop and pray about it or listen to, divine guidance or anything. No, we're going to make it happen. We're going to solve it. We're going to, and our brains are just going 90 to nothing out there. So we have to slow down, and we have to first go to that idea of love. Feel love within yourself and allow love to come up to faith and allow faith to be expressed through love. And that changes everything. And just like everything we do in life, in order to master it, we have to what? Practice it, don't we?
Yes.
Yes, so we have to practice it until it becomes our second nature, which is kind of an oxymoron, really. Because the thoughts that are true, the thoughts that are based on truth, are really our first nature, our natural nature, are really just the part of us that is there. So it's really not second nature, you see what I'm saying? It's really who we are. And just like the idea of loving thoughts, which are as natural as thoughts can be, if we allow them to be in the forefront of our lives, faith will be attached to those thoughts. You see, the power of love is in the heart center, meaning that it originates as a feeling, and when it is aligned with the knowing of faith, we can feel and know unconditional love for everyone and everything. And because of free will and the freedom we get to choose, we decide how we're going to use this. And sometimes what happens in the thought process or the feeling process, especially feelings, when feelings get involved, sometimes, we just take it personal, don't we? or we think, poor me. You know, we get on that whole thing. But the minute we start doing that, then we're taking it in a selfish way. And we distort our natural flow of thoughts and feelings. And then they get aligned with the ego. And what happens then? Now, the ego can be a good thing, don't get me wrong. But when we distort our thoughts and feelings and the ego takes hold, we can really run amok with that whole mess, can't we? You know, because we sit there and we just do whatever we want to do. And we know that it doesn't make us happy. We know it's not joy-filled. We know we're not serving anyone else when our thoughts or feelings, or especially once they go into being words at somebody, aren't coming from that place of, is this a loving thought? Right? Yeah. So we have to think about that, because none of that's going to serve our soul. You know, we all have this longing in our soul, right? Don't you?
Yes.
Like, you know you're supposed to be doing something more? Or what is it I'm supposed to be doing? Or why aren't I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And the whole thing is, when you align in prayer and meditation, or you align on a daily basis, or even when you're having a conversation with someone, if you align from that Christ within, that heart center, and your thoughts are based on that knowing that God is in the midst of your whole beingness, then guess what? You're going to feel and know that all is good. Do you know what I'm saying? You're not going to distort it. You're not going to feel anything less than. You're going to be on fire. It'll be back to that fire of the Spirit. That's why it's important for us to truly know faith and to really understand the feelings behind love, so that we can recognize if they are aligned with truth and if they are aligned with God. So why do we cling on to control and allow our ego to guide us, and or believe we are doing what we're supposed to be doing when we know we are kidding ourselves with this nonsense? Oh yeah, one more thing about the knowing within inside. What I was saying is, if you are spiritually aligned, you'll know that you are doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. It's not something out there. It's not the next course, or it's not the next thing I need to learn, or it's not the video I need to watch. It's about developing what is within you to the outer. Do you see what I'm saying? And that longing becomes energy. It becomes expansion. It becomes a greater consciousness. And that's what we're all here for, is to do that, to find that place in our soul where we can expand it more. Sometimes it's with music. Sometimes it's with poetry. Sometimes it's just being in the silence with your own thoughts and figuring those out. So my idea about why we cling on to the other stuff, why we cling on to control or allow our ego to guide us, and even when we know we're not supposed to be doing something or saying something, and we'll kid ourselves, you know, with this whole nonsense. We'll say, oh, you know, I was just having a bad day, you know, so-and-so made me mad, or I just don't like what they're doing. You know, we always put it out there instead of saying, no, I'm not going to live from that. I'm waking up this morning and I'm going to live from my spiritual aspect, which is truth and wholeness and all that there is in the universe. And when we do that, it's a whole different thing. But I think what happens when we get to that place of kidding ourselves and go from ego and all that, then I think that we have let outside influences control our natural state of anxiety. And yeah, you're probably thinking, anxiety? But I'm talking about anxiety because, believe it or not, anxiety is a natural, normal response to potential threats, which puts your body into a heightened state of awareness.
Wow.
You see, it's not a bad thing. Anxiety can be the thing that protects us. And in an article from Dr. Mercola, it says, when felt appropriately, anxiety is beneficial and can keep you out of harm's way. The anxiety you may feel while hiking near a steep drop-off, that's me. I don't even like driving a car around a steep drop-off, for instance, will cause you to be more careful and purposeful in your movements. So anxiety can be a good thing when it's used in the natural state that it's supposed to be used in. But if I say to somebody, oh, it's anxiety, then you probably think I have a mental disorder. You know? I mean, or somebody has said, oh yeah, the doctor said it's anxiety, so I have to take the pills, you know, or whatever. I mean, and I get that. I'm not saying anything bad about pills, I'm just saying. But the natural response of anxiety is to protect us. But why do we allow it to be stolen by the ego and turn it into a nightmare, you know? Why do we allow that to happen for us? You see, there's thoughts and feelings that become distorted, and they really can stir us into that mental uneasiness, which can add to the outcomes that relate to stress. Because there's a little fine line between anxiety and stress. And you know what happens with stress. Everybody knows that, right? We start losing hair, we gain belly fat, you know, we can't sleep, all these things that we don't want in our lives, do we? And yet how freely we give that away. We give our own power away to those kind of things. And over my lifetime, I figured out one thing about anxiety that this kind of relates. Over my lifetime, I feel like I've been very intuitive, and I've told people this. And sometimes I would allow this gift to absorb other people's thoughts and feelings. You know, they weren't mine, but I could be in a crowd and I could just sponge it all up. And when I'd leave, I'd start, feeling like I couldn't breathe, or I'd start feeling real anxious, and I'd say, oh my gosh, I'm having an anxiety attack. It took me a while to figure out, through my spiritual growth, that is me absorbing everybody else's stuff and then taking it on myself and having an anxiety attack, right? And the thing was that I physically felt it in my body. And that's what happens when it gets to that extreme. And when I finally realized that wasn't mine, I could take a breath and I could just stop and recenter and then say a little prayer, and it would just fall off of me and my peace would come back. And I still use that technique sometimes when I'm in a tight crowd, especially like somewhere where there's a lot of people really close. I can easily pick that up. But once I did that, it was so freeing. And I think that's probably a tip that all of us could use, because I know a lot of unity people, or a lot of people that are on their spiritual path, not dogmated by religion, but on a spiritual path, are intuitive people. And you feel that. And just think, as much as you feel other people's CRAP, think about what it would be like to feel everybody's love instead. Because if we all start coming from that place of love, then that's what we're going to feel. We're not going to feel that other stuff, are we?
Amen.
And how much more powerful is that going to make us feel? And that's the kind of stuff we want to attract with our magnet, isn't it? Is the idea of love and all the good. Yeah. Well, if you know me, then I like to throw in some science in the whole mix of everything. And so I got this for you. The National Institute of Mental Health explains several parts of the brain are key factors in production of fear and anxiety. Scientists have discovered that thank you. Yeah, I'll let you say them for me, okay? And the hippocampus. I didn't know if it was like hippo or if it was hypo. So I was like, you said hippo though. Who said hypo? Oh, okay. Yeah, there you go. Hippo plays significant roles in most anxiety disorders. The amygdala is an almond-shaped structure deep in the brain that is believed to be a communications hub. Keep that in your mind. Between the parts of the brain that process incoming sensory signals, and what are sensory signals? Aren't they feelings? Mm-hmm. Feelings, and the parts that interpret these signals. It can alert the rest of the brain that a threat is present and trigger a fear or anxiety response. So that's where anxiety stems from, right? And that's all cool. But we have to remember that this is a communication hub. That means it's going to send, messages out to all parts of our body. But it also is sending messages to our consciousness. So once we realize that anxiety isn't a bad thing, you've already switched your consciousness with that thought right now because of me sharing that. If you didn't know that before, that anxiety isn't a bad thing, now you know that it's a protective thing. Just like the ego could be a protective thing too, if it's in balance. And I'm going to explain what the fulcrum is for all of this in just a second. But what is so cool about when I read this passage, and the Spirit of God just brings me these things sometimes, I tell you. But for faith, the power of faith, does anybody know where the body part is that Fillmore defined as, I know you know. For faith, well, it's the pineal gland, which just happens to be, there's the hippocampus, there's the whatever, amygdala. And right here, the fulcrum between these two parts of your brain is the pineal gland. I put it up here so you can see it up there, but that's exactly where it is, in between the two. So once we have those thoughts and stuff balanced on the idea of faith, then guess what happens? We're not going to go to that place of anxiety and stress and belly fat and all of that kind of stuff. All we have to do is say, those thoughts could go running with my ego or go running with whatever, and stress, or I can bring those thoughts back and treat them with love and let them be the fulcrum to keep the balance in my brain so that my whole body and my whole consciousness is in that place of spiritual awareness. Make sense? Yeah, I loved it. I love that stuff. But anyway, it also to me, it proves that we are these beings that God has put on this earth to do something greater than what we're doing right now. And it is in that oneness that we all have these same body parts, you know? And it is in that oneness that we can all help each other be the fulcrum for each other. Be that balancing point. But that's why it's imperative for us to take time in prayer and meditation. You know, because it keeps our thoughts and feelings spiritually aligned on truth and on God. Last week I read a passage from Dr. Eben Alexander's book, Proof of Heaven, as the meditation. And for those of you that were here, I really felt like it was really a spiritual experience. And he just writes these words that expand your consciousness and transports the reader to another place of existence. Well, I found a great article that went along with what I was doing today, not from him, but from a woman who has done research on near-death experiences, because that's what his book is all about. And she found a neuroscientist who had made a device he calls the God helmet. You'll love this. The God helmet. And it's a yellow snowmobile helmet that he modified to deliver patterns of electromagnetic pulses. Electromagnetic, we're back to magnets again. Anyway, he says it stimulates parts of the brain so that a person can have a deep spiritual experience. And guess where some of the places are that they stimulate? Right in here. Yeah. So by stimulating the parts of the brain, it takes you into that place of transcendence. It takes you into that place of connectedness. And he says it's a sense of knowing God is. And that's what faith truly is, isn't it? A knowing that God is right here, right now, within us, moving through us, and a part of us, and a part of everyone else. So this doctor wrote, Dr. Persinger, suggests that the brain is hardwired for transcendent experiences and a sense of connectedness. In fact, he sees this as an evolutionary strategy. As human beings developed language, he points out, we became aware of our mortality. The anticipation that we would die was devastated and interfered with creativity and adaptation as anxiety does. The brain's ability to feel a mystical sense of union with the world may have begun as a coping mechanism for dealing with that anxiety, one that frees us to carry on with the business of living. So we're back to that anxiety being a thing that's triggering us, but it's the anxiety over our own mortality, which, all of this that I'm sharing just ties together so perfectly into that idea of faith and love. And the person who wrote this article was Harriet Brown. And what was really cool is because she had a near-death experience, she wrote this and did this research. And she said that she had a spiritual experience that she could not explain during that near-death experience. And here's what she says. In some way, I can't rationally explain. I was given a gift, the gift of feeling that I am deeply loved. And we are deeply loved. Because of this, we can be loving. From Christian Healing, Charles Fillmore wrote, God is love, and God is all. Therefore, I refuse to believe in hate or revenge. And if only we could keep that in the forefront of our minds and our living, we could unlock the doors that stand in the way of us experiencing love all the time. And by having faith and know that we are one with God, that should be what we want to express in our lives. And when we no longer have hate or revenge, we won't even be able to experience that anymore. All we will experience is love. That's right. Last week, Reverend Warren used this definition of love from the Revealing Word, and I'm using it again because love is an inner quality that sees good everywhere and in everybody. It insists that all is good by refusing to see anything but good. It causes that quality finally to appear uppermost in itself and in all things. If we could just magically put on the glasses that only see love, what would we be seeing with each other? Only good, only love. What a fantastic world this would be. I mean, it's powerful. And it's just a thought in our head that we have to switch and a feeling in our heart center. That's all it is. And you know, you might say I've been fascinated with people who have had near-death experiences. And I know that I have, but I haven't been fascinated by them to validate which I already knew. Because all my life I have known God. Even more than I can even describe at any particular time. And if a priest or a minister or anybody would describe God as punishing or upset with us or say that anything negative about God, I knew this was not true. I knew because my faith was greater than I could even express. And I knew that the feeling of love I had inside was greater than anyone else could know. And I've lived my life from that truth, no matter what it cost me with anybody, because I knew it. And when the first time I walked into a Unity church and I heard the minister say, God is good and only good, I mean, I wanted to just bounce from the ceiling to the floor. Because it was like, thank you. Somebody finally said what I needed to hear that I knew in my heart but couldn't express in words. And it's the truth. God is only good and God only has good in store for us. And if we come from that place, then we will have our faith expressing all the time and our love expressing all the time. You know, my soul is on fire, and my soul is on fire hearing that God is only good and only good. And I loved it when, there we go. That faith, I don't know where that one came from. It was in there, but who knows. Anyway, it happens. I love that when Fillmore said faith is the fire of spirit, because I felt faith deep in my soul when I realized this and when I heard that God is good. And I felt it so deep that it was more than anybody could ever explain. And that's what it reminded me of about Eben Alexander's book. The way he describes that going to the core, which was him having the experience of being in the oneness of God, I felt like that's the feeling that I've had in my soul for so long. And when we align our thoughts and this passage from John 4:12, we can easily bring into fruition all that we know that to be true in our own lives. And we will make a difference in the world because of what we are holding in our minds and our hearts and sharing with each other. So I'd love for you to say this with me, if you will. No one has ever seen God, but if we love each other, God lives in us. And God's love is brought to full expression in us. Thank you for being here today. God bless you.